Hello, welcome. Ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to make a Minecraft mod, and I've tried many times in the past when I was a kid. It never worked very well. You follow all the tutorials and you're able to create a block and maybe an item, but I always wanted to add some sort of content mod that would change how you play the game and not just adding in mundane things that already exist. As my first Minecraft mod project, especially just starting out with using Java, I wanted to change up a mechanic of Minecraft that I've never really been a big fan of, and that's the hunger system. I don't really like the hunger system in Minecraft because it seems like its main purpose is to get the best food, so you have to interact with this system as little as possible. And I think for a game as big as Minecraft, I think it deserves to have a system that complements the game a little bit better. Now, I'm not some idea genius. I did look around for some inspiration, and I'm a big fan of Valheim's hunger system. I like the philosophy behind what they did, where they're not leading with the stick in terms of punishing you for not eating, i.e., starvation mechanics. They're rewarding you for interacting with this mechanic by giving you extra health, extra stamina, and later on, even magic. Now, that's way more in depth than what I would need, and so I'll definitely be simplifying the system a lot, but this is definitely the area that I want to look at. So, the first thing I had to do was learning the whole Minecraft modding environment, and also learning Java. It is very similar to C Sharp, which is what I'm used to. However, it does come with its own quirks. Nothing major, just things that I had to get used to. The other thing that I had to learn, probably the thing that was the most difficult, was learning how to build on top of code that you're not allowed to edit to how you need it to be. Minecraft has its own source code, and you're not allowed to go in and change that. Obviously, there's ways that you can override things with, well, the override command and other sort of mix-ins, as they do provide that. But then it becomes very messy, and unless you need to do that, I've found that it's probably better not to. And so learning to have a system that works outside of it, pretty much decoupling it from the actual game, worked out best. So idea-wise, what I wanted to do was decrease the player's starting max health to 3 hearts, and as you eat food, you can increase that max health for a duration. So the thing that goes along with hunger and health in Minecraft is its regeneration system. So Minecraft's health regeneration system is very closely tied to the hunger system. And with the hunger system, if you didn't know, every time you eat food in Minecraft, you have a secondary hunger meter called saturation, and this is a hidden meter that will build up when you eat food, and it actually has to empty itself first before your hunger will start to go down. If you don't have a mod to show this saturation, you can kind of make the conclusion that when your hunger bar is full is when you can regenerate health, but it's actually the saturation that is converted into health when you're missing health. So if you don't have any saturation, you don't get any health even if your hunger is full. And so if you're missing health and you have saturation, you'll be regenerating health every half second, maybe every second, until you run out of saturation. And then when that's done, your hunger will start to go down, and then in the middle of battle, oftentimes you'll have to run away, eat a piece of food, and then run back, which to me breaks up the action a little bit too much. And so the game plan is change the hunger system, change the max health, and change the regeneration system. Easy, right? First thing that I did was changing the starting max health. This was actually pretty easy, and as long as you don't have a mod that conflicts with this, it should just work. The next step was to give all of the foods their own values in terms of health increase, in terms of duration, and in terms of regeneration amount. Regeneration amount we'll talk about a little bit later. When I first attempted this, I used an override on the foods to change the hunger values and the saturation values, and I was going to just reuse those as the health and duration, but I realized that that would not only restrict what types of values I could use, it would also restrict or conflict with other mods that might be added. And so I ended up making my own modded food component and then just storing everything in a hash map that would have the regular food component as the key and the modded food component as the value. And so if we ever wanted to reference like bread, if we wanted to get our custom values, we just take the hash map and plug in bread and we get our modded bread. The final thing I had to do was override the hunger manager. I know I said that I didn't want to override things, but this was one where I actually had to, mainly because I needed to disable the old one with the hunger since we won't be using it anymore. The reason why we need to extend it and override it is because we'll still be using the eat function. When you eat food, it calls the eat function. We still need that. We just need to change what it does. So I won't get too much into the word for word of what I did, but essentially when you eat food, it gets put into your stack of food that you've eaten to a maximum of 3, and we keep track of the total amount between all the food you've eaten, how much health you've increased by, the duration of each of the foods, and your total health regeneration modifier. Now, the max health and the duration, I'm sure, are fairly self-explanatory, but the health regeneration might need a bit more of an explanation. Each food item has their own regeneration amount value, which gets added to a pool when you eat it. So when you eat 3 items, all of those regeneration amounts get added together, and then when you reach the requirements to regenerate, that pool gets added onto your current health up to your maximum health. And the system that determines when you regenerate is when you're missing health, we start a timer behind the scenes. When that ticks up to 20 seconds is when you regenerate that health. So instead of regenerating half a heart every second or so, instead, every 20 seconds, you regenerate a lump sum amount. The other thing about this is that you can actually affect this timer by hitting an opponent. So if you get hit, you will take a little bit of a penalty to your timer. So if you are at 16 seconds and you only need to wait 4 more seconds before you regenerate, if you take damage, you'll now be at, say, 15 seconds or whatever the value is set to. One consideration I had was tying the penalty to the amount of damage you deal. I decided against it because I thought it'd be more interesting to give the players a choice between waiting to deal more damage or hitting continuously to prevent regeneration from happening. And finally, when you leave the game, we need some way to save the data of what you've eaten and how long is left. So that way, when you log back in, you're left in the same state that you were when you logged out. And then I needed to fix a few bugs between server and client synchronization. But after that, put on some UI, and we're done.